Hello everybody, it's Lonk the Same. Glad to have you back on my channel, or welcome to my channel, whichever the case may be. Now last week we started a series. We started looking at each of the colors on Mythgard's color wheel, and today we're going to continue that series. Last week we took a look at red. This week we're going to take a look at orange. So, what is orange all about? Well, orange within the game is known as Parsa, and the Parsa are ruled by a single all-powerful female deity who, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually have a name. But over the years, she's amassed quite a following, and her devoted followers have conquered some of the native tribes and brought them into the fold. So as a result, the Parsa are not only the most ancient of the civilizations, but they're also the most populous. And this deity also has a number of ways to interact with the world itself. She has a number of angels and a number of golems at her disposal that carry out her will. So it's kind of a mix of Middle Eastern, Persian, Egyptian type mythology and a little bit of Christian, Arabic, Hebrew theology. So how does this translate into the game itself? Well, on the religious aspect, you see things like the angels, the zealots, and the heralds. Um, because this world is so populous, there are a number of ways to generate tokens, which put out smaller minions, but they can do what's called going wide strategy. In other words, they just kind of swarm all over the board. And also, because it's based on a desert setting, there are a number of ways to play out desert enchantments, and then you have minions, and you have other enchantments that kind of feed off of that, and it's kind of a synergistic type of strategy that you can employ. So we're going to get into some gameplay. Let's take a look at how it is Orange operates and what it can do when it's left to its own devices. But first, let me just run through the deck real quick so you guys can see what it is I'm trying to do. Like last time, this is not going to be a full deck tech video. I'm just trying to quickly show you guys the cards so you have a general idea of what I'm trying to do. If you want me to do a deck tech and go into more description on each card, leave a comment below. I'll gladly take your suggestions because, to be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing with this channel. Now, this is a deck that was played at a recent tournament. The tournament was called Gem Wars. Each player was playing monocolored deck, and this deck actually won the whole enchilada. It won the tournament, so congratulations, Invesi. It's definitely an interesting build for Mono Orange. I did make one change to it, though. Invesi runs a copy of Lamp of Wonders. I do not own the lamp. I'm not interested in owning the lamp, so I didn't want to grind up my cards to try and get it. Instead, I just omitted it and added an extra copy of Dark Passenger instead. So when I post the link to the deck list in the description below, I will post it to Invesi's original deck list, which has the lamp. So Invesi, lamp, Lonk, no lamp. And just as an extra caveat, I recorded these videos on Monday and Tuesday of last week, which is before the Friday patch hit. So the cards in this video are going to look different than they do now. So I apologize for that. That was poor planning on my part. And I'd love to say it'll never happen again, but I'm fairly certain it will. Anyway, the deck itself. The path we're going to use is Rainbow's End. We're playing a bunch of enchantments, and this will hopefully draw us a bunch of cards. Our power is going to be Impel, because Impel is just an awesome power all around. The first card we're going to look at is Eager Recruit. It's for 1 mana, it's a 2/1, and we get to put a 1/1 token into our hand. So this is one of the ways we're going to generate extra tokens to deploy later. Then we have 4 copies of Thieves' Bazaar, just a nice aggressive enchantment. Then we have 2 copies of Dark Passenger. It's a good way to cash in on our smaller tokens. We can crash it into an enemy minion, destroy it, and we'll draw a card off of it. Then we have 1 copy of Ghoul. This is a card that was hit by the patch, just an adjustment to the mana cost. The rest of it is pretty much the same. Then we have 3 copies of Sandscape. We do have some desert synergies in here, so this is one of the ways we'll get those online. Then we have 2 copies of Xerxes Hideout. This is the other way we're going to generate a bunch of tokens. If we can play this out early, we can keep putting minion after minion after minion on it and generate a whole bunch of tokens. Then we have Xerxes Recruiter. Just a nice way to draw an extra card. There's 3 copies of Dune Courser. This is one of our desert synergies. There's 2 copies of Resupply Caravan. This is one of the cards that was nerfed pretty hard in the latest patch. Before the patch, you could play the Caravan anywhere and it would give the adjacent minion the standard action. Now they have to be on the desert to get it, so it's a little bit tougher to play this out now. Then we have 3 copies of Serendipity Efreet. Just a good aggressive card all around. It's a 4/4 for just 3 mana. It lets us divination the top 3 cards of our library, and it does have a bit of a drawback, but it's a nice big body that lets us filter the top of the deck, so it's totally worth it. Then we have 2 copies of Soma Oasis. If we play it on Desert, we get to draw a card, but in either case, it allows us to play a minion in it, and that minion will have Immortal until our next turn. Then we have 2 copies of Perry at the Gates. It's a 2/2 that draws us 2 cards, which is fantastic. And if we can play this with something like To Heaven and Back, it gets really powerful because it's going to draw us a whole bunch of cards. Then we have 1 copy of Raziel. Nice way to look at the top cards of our library to filter them out for our draws. And if we can get the brand, we can demolish our opponent's hand very quickly. Then we have 1 copy of Scion of Pride. The Pride place that goes into our hand is interesting in this deck because not only can it cut down a larger enemy minion, but it can also pump up our smaller tokens. So very flexible in how we can use it. Then there's 1 copy of Seal of Exile, one of the best removal spells in this game. We do have to sacrifice 1 gem and 1 mana to cast it, but if we can banish all copies of a card, that's really, really good for us. Then there's 1 copy of Temptation. Just a nice way to steal, or rather borrow an enemy's minion for a turn, and then we can do some extra damage, or we can crash it into one of their other minions and hopefully take them both out. And there's 3 copies of Martycore. This is another one of our desert synergies. If it dies on the desert, it'll deal some additional damage. Then we have a copy of To Heaven and Back, one of the best enchantments in the game. If the minion occupying it is not an angel, when it dies, it will come back to our hand. It'll get +1/+1 in Agile, and its mana cost will be reduced. So it's a great way to recur some of our cards, especially like Xerxes Recruiter or Perry at the Gates. And we can use it to either draw a whole bunch of cards or, just to use it on a minion that doesn't have a good attack or is likely going to die. That way we can bounce it back to our hand and place it elsewhere as we need to. Then we have 1 copy of Lavish Proxy, the bane of aggro decks everywhere. It's just a very large creature, tough to deal with. And if they can't remove it, then we can't die. So they have to figure out a way to deal with it first. And hopefully, if we need it, it'll buy us enough time to make our comeback and win the game. And finally, everybody's favorite Armageddon Angel. Just a great sweeper to have. It wipes out everything on the board. And then it'll adjust its power and toughness depending on what minions it destroys. So that's a look at the deck. And I'm done yammering and chatting, and plus the server is going to update in a few minutes, so I'm just going to stop here. Let's get into the gameplay. Okay, game number 1. Our opponent is Deadly Question, playing blue-purple aggro, and our opening hand looks fairly aggressive itself. We don't have anything above 3 mana, but we have a couple of recruits. We have Xerxes and Hideout, so we have a way to generate a ton of tokens. And the fact that they're playing Journey of Souls kind of indicates that they're playing a more aggressive deck themselves. So this may end up being a very good matchup. And before we get into the game itself, let me just say, in this video, I am going to be a little bit critical of our opponent. Not trying to put him down, not trying to say they're a bad player by any means. I myself am far from perfect, but what I am trying to do is turn a few things into a teachable moment. So if it sounds like I'm being mean about our opponent, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just, trying to educate here. So if I sound a little bit mean, I apologize. And with that being said, let's get into the game itself. All right, out comes the Frecky Scout. And I know I said I want to go a little bigger. I didn't want to go that big though. Lavish Proxy's better later, so we'll just burn that. Play our Recruit and say go. Opponent plays out another Frecky Scout. Here comes Racer and Shadow. And I kind of touched on this in the last video when we did red, but aggressive decks don't want to be making trade after trade after trade. They want to be going after the opponent directly, hitting them as hard and fast as they can. So the fact that we're making them trade here and use up resources is working to our advantage. The goal is to get them to burn out in their hand before they have a chance to beat us. All right, so they just played Road Queen. We took a bunch of damage from the scouts, and that's just a reality you have to face when you're playing an aggressive deck. Turns 1, 2, and 3, you're going to take your lumps. You're going to take a lot of damage. Turns 4, 5, and 6, that's when you need to turn around. Otherwise, aggressive decks take over and win. We put the Ifrit in front of the Road Queen to block it. Put Demolition Speedway, so they'll still get a point, but we'll still trade. They play Knives in the Dark on their scout. Take out our Recruit. And at this point, our opponent's hand is completely empty. They had a very aggressive hand. They played out all their resources. And meanwhile, we've still got a full grip because of all the tokens that are in it. So this is when we're going to start to turn it around. We're going to start catching in, playing out those tokens that we've generated to take over the board. And we drew an Armageddon Angel. That'll be good in case we run into trouble one way or another. All right, parry at the gates. Draw us a couple cards, and we'll get a token with it. So, got 3 cards off of 1. Well, burns another card, plays Racer and Shadow. Takes out our parry at the gates, does us a couple points of damage. And seeing that our opponent's low on cards in hand, we're going to just take the aggressive stance here. We'll put our Insurgents on either end. And our opponent doesn't have any minions, so they're just going to pass the turn. Play Thieves Bazaar. I mean, they are still ahead of us on life, but we're basically winning with our hand advantage here. We have actions, things we can do with our hand. Our opponent is out of steam. And then Curious Play coming from our opponent. They're going to play the Bridge Raid Troll, and then they burn a God's Blood Transfusion. And let me just pause this here for a moment. So it's a curious play because generally in an aggressive style deck, you don't want to be burning more than 4 or 5 cards in a game. The reason is you're trying to hit your opponent as hard and as fast as you can, and you need the resources in your hand in order to do so. So you don't really have the cards to be burning turn after turn after turn. In a mid-range or control style deck, you have the luxury of time to be able, to build up your mana, to build into your bigger things. Here you're just trying to hit your opponent as hard as you can, so you need every resource that you have. So at this point, I'm wondering, what does our opponent have? What is it in their hand that they're trying to play? And, now that we have the replay, let's take a look at our opponent's deck. So if we go through our opponent's deck list, all right, they have a very solid, nice aggressive deck here. So far, so good. And, all right, here's where there's a bit of a problem at the top of the deck. They have an 8-mana Living Mountain and a 7-mana Daigoju Supreme. Both are excellent cards. However, they don't fit in well with an aggressive style deck because they just cost so much mana. You have to burn 7 or 8 cards just to be able to play them, and instead of being able to deploy those resources to beat your opponent, you're going to be burning them. Not what an aggressive deck wants to do. So just something to keep in mind when you're building a deck. Try to keep the costs low on your cards. You really don't want to go above 4 or 5 mana in an aggressive style deck. And as you can see here, our opponent is burning just a few too many cards in order to be able to cast these in case he gets them. So, okay, I'll resume the game here. Swinging at our opponent. Then we'll play Sign of Pride. The Pride of Place could be useful, especially with our smaller tokens. We could turn something to Lion and pump it up. Play out another Thieves Bazaar. And as you can see there, they hit their Living Mountain, but they didn't have the 4 blue gems to play it out, so they ended up burning it. We'll play Sign of Pride just in case, and take out our opponent. So yeah, our opponent ran into a bit of trouble. They kind of burned themselves out on that match. They deployed their hand and just kind of ran out of steam very quickly. But on our side of things, that's kind of what this deck wants to do. It's going to deploy tokens. It's going to deploy smaller minions. It's going to force you to make trade after trade after trade. And then once you're out of steam, then we were able to, play out our tokens, be able to basically just swarm the board and just take over in sheer numbers. So interesting game number 1. Let's see what's in store in game number 2. Okay, game number 2. Our opponent Sandstone, playing green and yellow, which is normally control colors, but this looks more like a mid-range type of build. And our opening hand is pretty solid. We have 1, 2, and 3 mana minions, and we also have a Sandscape in hand and a couple minions that benefit off it, most notably the Marty Core and the Dune Courser. So yeah, if everything goes as planned, this could be a very synergistic hand, and let's see what happens. Alright, burn the Dark Passenger. We have enough 2 mana things in our hand, so we'll just play the Recruit, say go. Opponent plays Ruslan's Blight. That's going to give everything that lane +1/+0 in armor 1. And once again, we draw Lavish Proxy way too early, so we'll just duck that back into the deck. Throw some sand on the battlefield. Alright, they play Samosic Living Sword. So it's going to do 2 damage to our minions when we hit our opponent, but eventually the sword's going to go away. So Recruit takes the damage from the sword and dies. Get a Dune Courser out onto the desert, which is where it wants to be. Alright, Security Phalanx on the Ruslan's Blight. It's tough not to crack, so let's just move the Courser over. It'll take 2 damage from the sword, but it's going to get that life back at the end of the turn because it's on the desert. And the Recruiter just drew us another Marty Core, and then we hit Xerxes Hideout with the Rainbow's End, so we're drawing very, very well at the moment. Alright, they play another Security Phalanx and a Pack Trooper. So let's play the Marty Core. We'll take out one of the Phalanxes. Swinging for 4 on our opponent. Dune Courser carrying the load here. Alright, Magpie Squad Leader, so it's not looking good for a Recruit. So we're going to put out the Heaven and Back on it. Basically turn to Obi-Wan. Strike it down, it'll just come back more powerful than it was before. I'm not going to try to do an impression. Oh, and we got Misanthropiad. So now we just got board wiped. Let's see if we can recover here. Right, play out the Recruiter that just died for literally no mana because Heaven and Back reduced mana cross. Alright, we'll pay the Efreet on the Heaven and Back. We'll put out Recruit on the Xerxes Hideout, so we'll get an extra token out of it. And we're just recovering at lightning speed here. They'll play Golden Axe, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that second part of the name. They played Yava Virus, but when the Marty Core died, it dealt the damage to the Golden Axe, and that allowed us to swing in for lethal. So maybe not the most exciting match there was, but there was a lot of good things that went on there. We had a lot of synergy with the desert out on the battlefield. You saw at the end there, Marty Core was able to deal damage because it was on the desert. Also, Dune Courser was able to regenerate and also deal an extra couple points of damage because it had that extra power. We got to deploy her to Heaven and Back. So we got to play Xerxes and Recruiter twice and draw us a couple of cards. And, Rainbow's End there just drew, a couple enchantments. So we just drew really well. We had good synergy in that one. So very different from the first game. First game, we were able to deploy a lot of tokens. This was a more synergistic type of victory, using the desert and the benefits that it provided, using the to heaven and back to bring back minions. So yeah, good couple of wins for us, and I think that's a good showing of exactly what it is Orange brings to the table. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I know it looks like I'm winning a lot, but that's really not my goal with these videos. My goal is to show off what the colors can do, but when a deck does what it's built to do, that tends to coincide with winning. So if I have a loss that can show off what a deck can do, I'll gladly show that as well. With that said, Orange was a lot more of a struggle to play than Mono Red. With Mono Red, I think I played 4 or 5 games on the ranked ladder. I was able to get the footage I needed. Here I was in the casual queue, and I think it took at least twice as many to get 2 good games in with Orange. The problem with Orange is, especially with the going wide strategy, in a game like Magic the Gathering, you can generate an infinite number of tokens and just run over your opponent with them. In Mythgard, though, you're relegated to those 7 slots on the board. So, yeah, once you get into the mid to late game, you want to be playing out larger creatures. You really don't want to be playing out the tokens anymore. So I think Orange tends to struggle a little bit by itself. But that being said, I think it's important to know with Orange is that it's really not an aggressive color like Red was. Red wants to hit the opponent as hard and as fast as it can. Orange always wants to be building towards something. With the tokens, it wants to be, putting those tokens in your hand, let the opponent, deplete their resources, and then swarm the board, take over and win the game. With the deserts, it wants to be playing a more synergistic type of gameplay. It wants to be putting out the deserts, playing out the minions and enchantments that have synergies with those deserts, and it's kind of build up the army slowly over time. So I say Orange is more squarely in the mid-range territory, which makes it a very versatile, very flexible color. And I think Orange, more than any other colors, just there. I don't think there's a bad pairing with any of the other colors on the color wheel. So Orange, very fun, very flexible, and yeah, a very interesting color to play indeed. So thank you once again for tuning in. I will be back next week with, we're going to be doing Mono Yellow. If you guys haven't caught on yet, I'm going in Rainbow Order, so Roy G. Biv. Next one is going to be Yellow, which should be interesting, hopefully. And I would like to do another non-gameplay video this week. I don't know with Turkey Day falling on Thursday if that's going to be possible. I believe Mondays and Thursdays are the usual days I'll be posting videos, so definitely tune in on those days. Or if you would like to get notifications, just hit the notification and definitely hit the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys think of Orange as well. Do you have a favorite card in Orange? Do you think maybe I'm wrong? Do you think maybe Orange is stronger than I suggested? Do you maybe have a build that works better for Mono Orange? Discuss what you will in the comments below. And I will see you guys again in the near future.